Imagine starting with nothing. No palace, no army, no gold, just a horse, a sword, and a dream too big for the land you stand on. That was Osman, and from that small beginning, he built something the world had never seen before. In the year 1258, the Mongol armies destroyed Baghdad, one of the greatest cities in the Islamic world. Libraries burned, scholars died. The Abbasid Caliphate, which had ruled for over 500 years, collapsed in a single week. The Muslim world was in shock. It felt like the end of everything. But in the hills of northwestern Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, a young leader named Osman I was watching. He was the chief of a small Turkish tribe called the Kayi, with only a few thousand warriors and a piece of land no bigger than a U.S. county. Most people had never heard of him. He had no famous bloodline, no great city, no special wealth. He was, by all accounts, a nobody. Yet Osman understood something that other leaders around him did not. Chaos is not the end. It is an opportunity. With the Mongols destroying the east and the Byzantine Empire weakening in the west, there was a power vacuum in Anatolia. Nobody was truly in charge, and into that vacuum, Osman stepped. He began raiding Byzantine border towns. He offered protection to Muslim refugees fleeing the Mongols. He built alliances with other Turkish chiefs through marriage and loyalty, not just force. He was smart, patient, and deeply religious, which gave him the trust of the people around him. By 1299, Osman declared independence from the Seljuk Sultanate, which had once ruled the region but was now too weak to matter. This moment is traditionally considered the founding of the Ottoman Empire, named after Osman himself. In Turkish, Osman becomes Othman, and in Arabic it becomes Uthman. The Europeans called his followers the Ottomans, and the name stuck for the next 6 centuries. Osman died around 1326, but the empire he started did not slow down. His son, Orhan I, took the throne and immediately made a decision that would change everything. He created a real government, not just a tribe with a strong leader, but an organized state with laws, taxes, courts, and, most importantly, a professional army. One of Orhan's most powerful innovations was the Janissary system. He recruited young Christian boys from conquered territories, converted them to Islam, and trained them from childhood to become elite soldiers. These boys had no family loyalties, no tribal politics, no personal land, only the Sultan. They became the most disciplined fighting force in the region, completely devoted to the Ottoman cause. It sounds harsh by modern standards, but at the time, it was revolutionary. The Janissaries would go on to be the backbone of Ottoman military power for over 300 years. By 1354, the Ottomans crossed into Europe for the first time, taking the fortress of Gallipoli, the same peninsula where, centuries later, a brutal World War I battle would be fought. This was a historic moment. For the first time, a Muslim Turkish power had a foothold on European soil. The rulers of Europe were not yet worried. They should have been. Under Murad I, Orhan's son, the Ottomans pushed deep into the Balkans. They conquered Thrace, moved into Bulgaria, and in 1389 fought one of the most famous battles in European history, the Battle of Kosovo. The Serbian Empire, which had once been the strongest Christian power in the Balkans, was destroyed in a single afternoon. Murad himself was assassinated on the battlefield, allegedly stabbed by a wounded Serbian knight, but his army won anyway. His son, Bayezid I, took command on the spot and crushed the remaining enemy forces without missing a beat. For 150 years after Osman's first raids, every Ottoman sultan had one dream above all others: Constantinople. The city sat on a thin strip of land between Europe and Asia, surrounded by water on three sides. It had survived Arab sieges for centuries. Its walls, the Theodosian walls, were considered unbreakable. Inside those walls was the Byzantine Empire, the last surviving piece of ancient Rome, Christian, Greek-speaking, and deeply symbolic to the entire Western world. Taking Constantinople was not just a military goal. It was a statement to the world: we are the greatest power on earth. In the spring of 1453, a 21-year-old sultan named Mehmed II arrived outside Constantinople's walls with an army of 80,000 men. And something new: massive cannons, designed by a Hungarian engineer named Orban, capable of firing stone balls weighing over 500 kilograms. Nothing like them had ever been used in warfare before. The Byzantine Emperor, Constantine XI, had only 7,000 defenders. He sent desperate messages to the Pope, to Venice, to the kings of Europe. "Help me," he said. "This city is the shield of Christendom." Almost no one came. A small force of Venetian and Genoese volunteers arrived, but it was nowhere near enough. For 53 days, Mehmed's cannons pounded the ancient walls. The Byzantines repaired the damage at night. Mehmed attacked at night too. He even did something that seemed impossible. He moved 70 of his warships overland, rolling them on logs across a hill, to get them into the Golden Horn Harbor, which the Byzantines had blocked with a chain. The defenders woke up one morning to find Ottoman ships inside their harbor. Their faces, according to contemporary accounts, turned white. On May 29, 1453, the walls finally broke. Constantine XI put on ordinary soldiers' armor, fought in the streets alongside his men, and died in the chaos. His body was never found with certainty. Constantinople fell. The Eastern Roman Empire, which had lasted 1,000 years longer than the Western Roman Empire, ended not with a treaty, but with the sound of Ottoman cannons. Mehmed II rode into the city that afternoon. He was 21 years old. He walked into the great cathedral of Hagia Sophia, knelt down, and prayed. Then he renamed the city Istanbul and declared it the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. The world had changed, and the greatest era of Ottoman power was only just beginning. He was called the Magnificent by Europeans and the Lawgiver by his own people. He ruled for 46 years, fought 13 major military campaigns, and brought the Ottoman Empire to a size that no sultan before or after him would ever match. His name was Suleiman, and in the 1500s he was the most powerful man on earth. When Mehmed II rode into Constantinople in 1453, the world did not end for the Christians of Europe, but it changed forever. The old trade routes between Europe and Asia, which passed through Byzantine territory, were now under Ottoman control. European merchants who wanted spices from India, silk from China, and gold from the East had to deal with the Ottomans, and the Ottomans set the prices. This is one of the most important and underappreciated facts in world history. The Ottoman conquest of Constantinople helped push European nations, Spain, Portugal, England, to search for new routes to Asia by sea. That search led directly to Christopher Columbus sailing west in 1492 and Vasco da Gama sailing around Africa in 1498. the age of European exploration, which would reshape the entire planet, was partly born from Ottoman power. But the Ottomans were not finished expanding. Mehmed II went on to conquer Albania, Bosnia, and most of the Aegean islands. He even launched an invasion of Italy in 1480, briefly capturing the city of Otranto. The Pope was preparing to flee Rome. Then Mehmed died suddenly, the army withdrew, and Europe exhaled. For the moment. In 1520, a new sultan took the throne, Suleiman I, who would later be known across the world simply as the Magnificent. He was 26 years old, educated, multilingual, and deeply serious about both war and justice. He spoke Ottoman Turkish, Arabic, Persian, Serbian, and some Chagatai. He wrote poetry under the pen name Muhibi, meaning the lover. He was, by almost every account from both friend and enemy, an extraordinary human being. Suleiman wasted no time. In his first year as Sultan, he captured Belgrade, the key fortress of the northern Balkans that even his great-grandfather Mehmed II had failed to take. The following year, he drove the Knights of St. John off the island of Rhodes after a 6-month siege, ending a Christian military presence in the eastern Mediterranean that had lasted over 2 centuries. Then came his most famous campaign in Europe. In 1526, Suleiman faced King Louis II of Hungary at the Battle of Mohacs. It lasted less than 2 hours. The Hungarian army was destroyed. Louis II himself died. His horse fell into a stream while he was fleeing, and he drowned under the weight of his armor. Suleiman walked across the battlefield afterward and reportedly said, "I came here not to wage war on a man, but on a great king. I am sorry that he did not live to taste victory or defeat." He was a warrior, but he also understood dignity. Hungary fell. The road to Vienna was open. In the autumn of 1529, Suleiman arrived outside the walls of Vienna with an army estimated at 120,000 men. Vienna was the heart of the Habsburg Empire, the most powerful Christian dynasty in Europe. If Vienna fell, there was nothing between the Ottomans and the rest of Western Europe. The Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, was terrified. The people of Vienna were terrified. All of Christian Europe held its breath. But the siege failed. The Ottoman supply lines were dangerously long. Vienna was nearly 1,000 miles from Istanbul. The army had marched through rain and mud for months. The heavy siege cannons had been left behind because the roads could not support them. And Vienna's defenders, though heavily outnumbered, fought with desperate courage. When an early winter storm hit, Suleiman made the painful decision to withdraw. He tried again in 1532, but never reached Vienna. The weather, the distance, and fierce resistance at the small fortress of Gunz, where just 700 Croatian soldiers held off the entire Ottoman army for 25 days, stopped him again. Vienna never fell to the Ottomans, but the fact that they came so close, twice, sent a shock through Europe that lasted for generations. The fear of the Turk became part of European culture, politics, and religion for the next 2 centuries. Meanwhile, Suleiman was also expanding in the east. He fought 3 wars against the Safavid Persian Empire, capturing Baghdad in 1534 and Tabriz multiple times. He built a powerful Ottoman navy under the command of his brilliant admiral Hayreddin Barbarossa, who dominated the Mediterranean Sea and raided the coasts of Spain, France, and Italy. By the 1550s, the Ottoman Empire controlled 3 continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa. It stretched from Algeria in the west to the Persian Gulf in the east, from Hungary in the north to Yemen in the south. No empire in the Islamic world had ever been this large. Very few empires in all of world history had ever been this powerful. What made Suleiman truly extraordinary was not just his military record. It was what he built at home. He created a comprehensive legal code, the Kanun, that organized the entire Ottoman state: taxes, land ownership, criminal justice, trade, and the rights of non-Muslim subjects. His own people did not call him the Magnificent. They called him Kanuni Sultan Suleiman, Suleiman the lawgiver. To them, good law mattered more than battlefield glory. Under Suleiman, the Ottoman capital Istanbul became one of the most beautiful cities on earth. His chief architect, Mimar Sinan, designed hundreds of buildings across the empire, including the Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul, a masterpiece that still stands today and still takes your breath away when you see it for the first time. Sinan would go on to build over 370 structures during his career, more than any architect in history. Suleiman died on September 7, 1566, in his military tent during his 13th campaign, a siege of the Hungarian fortress of Sigedvar. He was 71 years old. His Grand Vizier hid his death from the army for 3 weeks so the troops would not lose morale during the siege. When the news finally reached Istanbul, the entire city went into mourning. An era had ended. The Ottoman Empire at its peak under Suleiman had 15 million people, a navy of 400 ships, and an army that no single European nation could match alone. Europe had learned to fight the Ottomans only by forming alliances, and even then, it was never easy. For the ordinary people of the empire, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Greek, Arab, Turkish, Slavic, life under Suleiman's law was often more stable and more just than what their neighbors experienced in fragmented, war-torn Europe. But every peak is followed by a slope. After Suleiman, the empire would face something it had never truly confronted before: the slow, quiet, painful question of what happens when a great power stops growing. Empires do not fall in a single day. They fall the way a great tree falls, slowly, silently, from the inside. For 350 years after Suleiman's death, the Ottoman Empire fought, reformed, survived, and struggled. It was called the sick man of Europe, but it refused to die, until, finally, it did. The first serious sign that Ottoman power had limits came in 1571, just 5 years after Suleiman's death. At the Battle of Lepanto, off the coast of Greece, a combined Christian fleet organized by Pope Pius V, ships from Spain, Venice, Genoa, and the Papal States, destroyed the Ottoman navy in a single afternoon. Over 200 Ottoman warships were sunk or captured. It was the largest naval battle in the Mediterranean since ancient Rome. The Christian world celebrated wildly. Church bells rang across Europe. The Ottomans rebuilt their navy within 2 years. They had the resources and the shipyards, and went on to conquer Cyprus and Tunisia. So Lepanto was not the end, but it proved something important. The Ottomans could be beaten. The psychological wall of invincibility that had protected the empire for 150 years had cracked. Then came 1683. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, led an Ottoman army of 150,000 men to Vienna, the same city Suleiman had twice failed to take. This time, the Ottomans came even closer. The siege lasted 2 months. Vienna was starving. Its walls were crumbling. The city was days away from surrender. Then, King John III Sobieski of Poland arrived with a relief army. On September 12, 1683, in the largest cavalry charge in history, nearly 20,000 Polish and Allied horsemen riding downhill at full speed, the Ottoman lines broke. Kara Mustafa retreated and was later executed by the Sultan for his failure, strangled with a silk cord as Ottoman custom demanded for disgraced officials. The Ottoman Empire never again threatened Western Europe. The tide had permanently turned. After 1683, the Ottoman retreat was slow but steady. Treaty by treaty, war by war, the empire gave back land it had held for centuries. Greece won independence in 1830 after a brutal war, with help from Britain, France, and Russia. Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, and Montenegro followed in the decades after. The great Balkan territories that the Ottomans had ruled since the 1300s were slipping away, one by one. Inside the empire, things were not much better. The old systems that had made the Ottomans great were breaking down. The Janissaries, once the most feared fighting force in the world, had become a political faction more interested in palace coups than battlefield discipline. They overthrew sultans they disliked and blocked every attempt at military reform. In 1826, Sultan Mahmud II finally abolished them in an event the Ottomans called the Auspicious Incident. He surrounded their barracks with loyal troops and artillery and simply destroyed them. Thousands of Janissaries died in a single night. The institution that had served the empire for nearly 500 years was gone. Mahmud II and his successors tried desperately to modernize. They built military academies on European models, invited foreign engineers and advisors, reformed the legal system, opened modern schools, and issued the Tanzimat reforms in 1839, a series of edicts that guaranteed equal rights for all Ottoman subjects regardless of religion. On paper, a Christian and a Muslim were now equal before Ottoman law. It was a remarkable statement for a Muslim empire in the 19th century. But reforms on paper are not always reforms in practice, and Europe was industrializing faster than any reform could match. By 1853, Tsar Nicholas I of Russia was openly calling the Ottoman Empire the sick man of Europe, a dying patient that the great powers were already preparing to divide among themselves. Russia wanted the Balkans and access to the Mediterranean. Britain and France wanted to stop Russia from getting too strong. The result was a series of devastating wars that bled the empire dry. The end came from the worst possible decision, choosing the wrong side in World War I. In 1914, the Ottoman leadership, dominated by a group of nationalist officers called the Committee of Union and Progress, or the Young Turks, allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary against Britain, France, and Russia. They believed a German victory would save the empire. Germany lost. The war was catastrophic for the Ottomans. The Arab territories revolted, aided by the famous British officer T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, who helped organize Arab tribes against Ottoman rule. The British captured Baghdad and Jerusalem. The empire lost its Arab heartland, and in 1915, in one of the darkest chapters of Ottoman history, the government ordered the mass deportation of the Armenian population of Anatolia, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people in what historians and many governments today recognize as the Armenian Genocide. When the war ended in 1918, the empire was finished. The victorious Allied powers occupied Istanbul. The last Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed VI, was little more than a puppet. Foreign warships sat in the Bosphorus Strait, the same waters that Ottoman galleys had once ruled without challenge. But the story did not end quietly. A former Ottoman general named Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, meaning father of the Turks, refused to accept defeat. He organized a resistance movement in the Anatolian interior, fought back against Greek, Armenian, French, and Italian forces in a brutal 3-year war, and won. On November 1st, 1922, the Ottoman Sultanate was officially abolished. On October 29, 1923, the Republic of Turkey was declared. Mustafa Kemal became its first president and launched a revolution that transformed every aspect of Turkish life: the alphabet, the legal system, the clothing, the calendar, the role of religion in government. The Ottoman Empire was gone. 623 years after a tribal chief named Osman began raiding Byzantine villages in the hills of Anatolia, the state he built had finally come to an end. Epilogue: what it left behind. The Ottoman Empire ruled longer than the Roman Empire lasted in the West. It governed 3 continents and dozens of languages, religions, and ethnic groups for over 6 centuries. At its height, it was one of the most sophisticated administrative systems in the world. The cities it built, Istanbul, Cairo, Jerusalem, Baghdad, Sarajevo, are still alive today, still shaped by Ottoman streets, mosques, markets, and laws. The borders it drew, or failed to draw, still define conflicts in the Middle East, the Balkans, and North Africa today. When people ask why Iraq is so divided, why the Israel-Palestine conflict exists, why the Balkans erupted in war in the 1990s, part of the answer always leads back to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the chaotic, often brutal way the great powers carved it up afterward. Osman started with a horse, a sword, and a dream. What he built lasted 623 years, stretched across 5.2 million square kilometers, and shaped the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Not bad for a man nobody had ever heard of.